Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. It has been a while since I've done a solo episode, so here I am. Just get to hear me talk for a bit. So for your sake, I hope I wrap it up a little faster than some of my longer ones, but we shall see. There is a lot on this topic that I do want to talk about, so here we go. So today's topic is about feedback. Yeah, we've talked about this before. We've talked about good feedback, like positive feedback. We've talked about negative feedback, but we're going to take a different twist on it. And we're going to talk about how to receive feedback. Why are we talking about this? It's because no matter what we do as the feedback deliverers, there's always someone on the other end who is receiving it. Sometimes it's you, and sometimes it's your team member or even family member. And not all of us have been trained on how to deliver it properly. And there's times when those people who haven't been trained on it to how to deliver it, they also don't know how to receive it. And there's those of us who still struggle to receive it, even though we know how to deliver it. So there are a lot of things at play when someone is receiving feedback. So we're going to get into a lot of that as I go through, what's getting in the way and what we can do about it during the episode. So first, I'm going to give you a little background as to why we're talking about this today. So a friend of mine called me and she's like, "Can you help me? I have this client who is trying to give feedback to one of their team members, and constantly, like every time they say anything, she's throwing up these red flags and she's having a hard time with it. She's not getting better because of this, and we're at a loss. What can we do?" So we talked through some things. I reflected on a little bit of what I went through as a team member receiving feedback, and we came up with a few things that they can work on. So then at the end, she's like, "You need to do a podcast episode about this." I said, "You are right. I will." So here we are. It took me a few months to get there, but that is where we are now. On to where I was with feedback. And I think I've brought this up before a few times, just offhand comments, but I remember a very specific time, and I was actually a lot farther down in my career than you would think, but I think that is due to the fact that I got very little feedback in general through my career, which is probably not a great thing. Well, definitely not a great thing, but I was getting some feedback and I noticed I went to this, I could feel in my body this, like a lot of times when I get angry or stressed, I can almost feel blood rushing to my brain, and this this big response came, and then I took huge offense to it and just said, "Well, whatever you want, just tell me what you want me to do because this isn't working." And it was really snippy and snappy, and so not an appropriate response. Looking back now, I understand why that is. Number one, I hadn't in most of my life hadn't received much feedback in general. If anything, it was good, "Oh, you did such a good job doing exactly what we told you to do," a lot of "I was good in school," that kind of thing. And not very much of "tweak this, here's a little assistance," without some things loaded behind it. So I associated feedback to someone's out to get me, or there's an underlying "they don't like me" behind it. So there was a lot of shame filled in it, or a lot of "they hate me and they're ridiculing me, they're making fun of me." So a little bit of, sibling rivalry going on in there. So there was a lot of stories associated with feedback, and not everybody has my experiences, but we all have our own unique experiences, and we all have some experience with receiving feedback. So we're all going to tie it to some story. And now I want to clarify before we get any further, am I talking about positive feedback or constructive feedback? So it's both. However, I am going to lean more to the constructive, but there are still reactions associated to positive feedback too. I'm going to have you pause so you can close your eyes if you're not driving or watching something you need to watch. Close your eyes and think about receiving some positive feedback. So think about somebody has just said, wow, that was so impressive the way that you delivered that program yesterday, and your presentation was so well made and it made such an impact on the team. Imagine somebody said that to you. How do you feel? Anything coming up? So from my end, I know that I would be a little bit proud, and then I would be like, oh, I can't look too proud or too happy. And I would downplay it. And I'd be like, well, and I tried to make some kind of like excuse as to how something else or someone else made it easier, right? And I've just shared with you my other experiences with feedback. So there is still something there and something associated. So even when it's good feedback, we may not be responding the best, because how should we feel? We should feel proud. That's okay to be proud, and it's okay to be good at things. Now, take it to the other side. Let's say someone gave you feedback about that same presentation and they said, gosh, I really just didn't get what you were saying. It did not connect for me, and I'm not sure where you're going with it. How would that feel? Again, I would go to, what did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, I have to redo the whole thing. So you may have some of those similar feelings, or you may say, they don't know what they're talking about. They're an idiot, or whatever. I don't know. We're all going to respond differently. And that's because we associate our stories and our history with what's happening now. And that's because our brain shortcuts everything, right? Our brain is going to shortcut as much as it can because it's its job to save energy. So it's got some general responses that it likes to go to. So if we're going to help ourselves or our team members, we have to understand what the general response is going to be, and then figure out how to reroute it to something slightly more effective for us. So one thing I want to talk about, because it actually hits, at least for me, it hits, but it does hit for most people in both the positive and the constructive feedback zones. And that is this nasty little thing called shame. Shame can be very sticky and very difficult for us because it keeps us stuck in the moment. When we get stuck and we start thinking, oh my gosh, I did all this wrong. Oh my word, I can't do this. I better stop doing this. Or, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. This person, has been put out and they didn't get what they needed, or whatever it is. Or if they've given us something positive, I feel terrible that they're complimenting me. I feel guilty over that, or something. That there's shame. And when we stay stuck in shame, we stay stuck. We cannot move forward because our bodies are physically responding to that shame. Now, when we start to feel shame, it is good to feel it and let it kind of go through our body for about a minute, maybe two. There's some studies out there that say really any emotion, it's going to take about 2 minutes to go through your body. So if you allow it to go through for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, that range, and then say, okay, I felt it. What was it telling me? And then what am I doing about it? How do I move forward? Or let me listen to what this person is saying to me so that I can see what the next step is. So this is the basic gist. If you're not going to listen to the rest of the podcast, this is the gist of what I'm going to go through, but I'm going to give you some very practical things and practical ways to do this. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about what gets in the way and why feedback, especially feedback that brings shame and brings this kind of emotional response, why this gets in the way of us actually hearing it and doing anything about it or receiving it appropriately. So the first thing, I've mentioned it, is it's that experience with feedback. So we all have feedback tied to something in our history and something in our past that really that we've attached to it. So now that we've attached this feedback, this story to the feedback that we're getting, now our bodies will go through this same similar response cycle. But that's not helpful again. And what we have to understand what's happening with our body is that we're actually going through a stress response because of it, because of that shame that's associated with it. So when we feel stress response, so those are your fight, flight, freeze, and even fawn, which is actually a learned trauma response. When we go through these things, our body is physically putting a wall up. It's shooting chemicals, it's shooting adrenaline into our system. and it's getting us into this like overly excited mode. Okay, so that's getting in the way. Actual physical response is getting in the way. And also, what's also getting in the way is our ideas around why we're getting feedback. So we have an idea of perfection sometimes, especially high achievers, which are those people listening to this podcast likely. So high achievers will have this expectation of perfection, especially if you've been in your role for a while, because we expect that we know everything, or maybe we're a leader and we think that everybody thinks that we should know everything, right? So this sort of like perfection feeling gets in our way as well, and then creates this stress response as well. So, and then finally, what gets in the way as well is that sometimes when we get feedback, the person giving it isn't finishing the job. They're just telling us something that maybe is wrong, and they're not saying what you can do afterwards. And so it leaves you kind of hanging there. In reality, you actually don't know what's working for the person or not working for the person, or what you should do with it necessarily. So you can guess all you want. And if you're anything like me, sometimes the guessing gets you all in a tizzy, but ultimately it's because they're not finishing the job in general. All right, so what do we do about it? So first, I'm going to start with yourself. Many of us have probably struggled to receive feedback in the past. So let's start with ourselves, because when we can do it for ourselves, we can more easily do it for others. So what can we do first? So the first thing is if somebody gives us feedback, again, our body goes into that crazy stress response, right? We feel it. So the best thing you can do is take a breath. Okay. So the taking of the breath will allow that emotion to kind of run through our bodies, but it also allows us to pause, and it allows us to come out of that stress response and back down into our more in control brain. So people will sometimes call it the upstairs brain, which is that sort of panic mode, versus the downstairs brain, which is that more calm, I can think and I'm responding, not reacting. So take a deep breath. And so I say this a lot in my programs. A deep breath that is relaxing is not this. It is not that. Okay. That is I'm exacerbated breath. What it is, it's a very slow breath in. So your stomach comes out, not your chest. Your chest and your shoulders are not coming up. It's your stomach that is coming out, because you're filling down to your diaphragm level of airways. And you can count into like 4. I usually say 4. And then I want you to hold it for like a count of 2, and then breathe out for 6. So this is like a reset breath. The actual lengths and the counts aren't the important part, but the important part is that you breathe in as deeply as you can, totally fill up that gut kind of the breath, pause for 2 seconds, and then breathe out for longer than you breathed in for. People are like, I'm going to hyperventilate. This is why we pause, right? You pause because you kind of, it lets the air kind of feed into your body, but it also prevents the hyperventilation. So you're not going to hyperventilate, and you're only doing it like 2 to 3 times. So you're not going to hyperventilate, I promise you. But breathe in, hold, and breathe out for longer than you breathed in for. That will relax you. That will reset you and allow you to then hear what that person is saying and respond appropriately. So that's number 1. Number 2, work on your perspective. So this is something that kind of needs to happen all the time. But the more you practice it when you're not being told something, the better you're going to be in the situation, because you're going to still have to do it, because your body's still going to do the auto response until you really teach it. So start to think through how you're doing with things and changing your perspective from this all or nothing kind of fixed mindset to I am making progress. So I like to say progress, not perfection. I learned that from an excellent decluttering coach. So if anyone has listened to Dana K. White, she says this all the time. It's about progress, not perfection. But this is amazing for just understanding that it's not all or nothing. We're not perfect at things, and then when we're not perfect, we must suck. Like, that is not how it is. Or if I make a mistake, I suck. Like, that is not the truth. The truth is, you're human, you're going to make mistakes, and you're not perfect. No one's perfect at anything. And when you're learning something, it is hard. It will be hard. There will be challenges. And it's okay and always going to happen that you're going to have learning growth, learning curves, that sort of thing that are going to happen and need feedback from people. So changing that perspective of this all or nothing perfection is hugely beneficial, just to calm yourself down again and then realize I just have to tweak that and it's going to be even better. The third thing, not everybody, like I've said, has been trained to give proper feedback. So if you've ever read any of those comments, a lot of people like to tell the problem, but they don't necessarily, clarify what was wrong or what was missing and give you an idea of what good looks like. So it's about finishing the job. So sometimes we have to do that for the other person if we're not getting it from them. So ways we can do that. Number one, you can ask some clarifying questions. So you can say, okay, so help me understand what you didn't understand. So what did you understand from the presentation? Or, okay, well, did you understand this point? You start digging into, okay, where was the gap? So you're trying to identify the gap that they actually saw, then clarify, okay, well, what would have been better? What could have helped? So you're almost coaching them to coach you, which isn't always fun to do. But again, the better we get at it and the more we do it, the better we're going to be at giving feedback to others. And really the better off we're going to be, because if that feedback is real, then it's going to help us in the long run to better understand it and to more effectively do the thing again later. So that can be all helpful things for yourself. Now, how do we help others? So in similar ways, we're going to take some of the things that we've just talked about, but we're going to apply them to other people. So the first thing though is you and yourself, if you've given feedback to somebody and they are having a bad reaction and you can see it, you can see them going, just kind of freaking out a little bit or getting flippant like I do or did, you can first have empathy. Understand that their body is going through a stress reaction. So basically, our stress responses mean that our body physically thinks it's in danger, right? That is what a stress response is. So some danger has been detected, so their body has gone on defense. So have some empathy. All right. And you can do that by taking a breath, maybe modeling it for them. I would not recommend saying take a breath, because that will continue the stress response, but say, hey, I can see this is hard. What's going on? Or I can see you're having a hard time hearing this right now. Should we go, let's have a chat, or let's find out if they might need some processing time, and that's all right. But best to try to get them to come down a little bit and have a conversation with you to hear what's going on. Like why is this response happening? What not to say is, why are you reacting like this? And really, it's not a big deal. I'm just trying to give you feedback. Those are what not to say, right? Because you're number one, you're asking, why are you doing this? So you've said something that made them feel some shame. And now you've actually made them feel shame over how they reacted to the thing that you said. So now it's like double shame. So double bad. So give them some time, be empathetic. We can be empathetic with our facial expressions. We can be empathetic with their words in these kind of calming, affirming words, saying, hey, I can see this is hard. Tell me about it. What's going on? And help them to kind of see that connection. So that moves us into number two. So helping them to see, what did they think that you were saying when you gave this feedback? So again, that helps to understand the stories they've associated with it. And when we can help them to see it, you can then say, well, I'm not saying you're a failure. I'm just saying that this would help me more, or this would make you more effective. So let's work on that. Right? So just helping to disconnect that historical story from feedback today. It will take several times. Okay. It's not going to happen the first time. Like you will get them to maybe disconnect it that first time, but you'll probably have to do it again the next time, especially if somebody has really struggled with this in the past. So then the third thing, as I said before, make sure, like when I said it for yourself, make sure they finish the job. So make sure you finish the job. So make sure that they understand what good looks like as well, and that there is a clear action for them to do once they've gone away. So it is always best if this action has been come up with by them. So the way the conversation would go is you'd give them the feedback, you understand where they're coming from, their perspective with it, and then help make sure they understand what good looks like as well, kind of reaffirm what the expectation was. and then have them set a goal. Okay, well, what can you do differently next time? Or how would this look if you had to do it again? So make sure there's a clear action for them to do, because that helps them get out of the shame as well. And with that, I want to add something here to that, because there is a great nice tidbit that one of my favorite authors, Dr. Becky Kennedy, says about this learning place, she calls it. So again, when this kind of needing to separate from perfection and this feeling of shame when we're learning something and when we're getting this feedback sort of cycle. So this will help both with your team member and with yourself as well. Understanding that, so those on the YouTube are going to get the visual, but understanding that this area over here, so one end of our spectrum is, not knowing, and the other end of the spectrum is knowing. All right. And what would be wonderful is if there was just a nice little straight line from knowing to not knowing. However, there isn't. There isn't at all. There is this big, squiggly, messy, ugly, not pleasant feeling that goes from not knowing to knowing. And that is typically when we're going to get the most feedback, and is typically very frustrating. So having empathy, really being able to pull that kind of uncomfortableness out of people and helping them to be able to sustain that frustration and that kind of frustrating space of learning is going to help them grow. So whether this is your employee, your spouse, your child, like, this is a very real thing that all of us feel all the time, and being able to support others through it and help them to build the resilience within it is going to help everybody be better. So that is a key part. So you might even have to explain that to them, like do this little like curvy line drawing thing and show that this learning place is frustrating and hard, but that's actually how we build resilient people, is by being able to maintain life in that learning space a little bit longer. So it is best done with support. All right, off my little sidebar there and back to my list. But after we make sure there's an action and we help them through this frustrating place, some key things, little key tidbits that we can do to help support people getting better at feedback is to do it more often, right? I'm not saying give negative feedback all the time or constructive feedback that feels negative to people. I'm not saying to do that constantly, but what I'm saying is just give more feedback in general. If we've got a story that tells us that feedback is bad, scary, it's mean, it's whatever, and then we start to see where feedback isn't those things, the more times we see that, the better we can disconnect that story from it. So the more often they're receiving some form of feedback, the better. You can even help with that by having them give some level of feedback first. So how do you think that went? What went well for you? What was your favorite part of it? Okay, and what would you do differently, if anything, if you had to do it again? Or what didn't you like about it? And just let them give some feedback and say, then you can either affirm their thoughts or ideas, or you can say, and this other thing, I bet you if you just tweaked this, it would get even better, or whatever the feedback is. So again, doing it more often. If someone really struggles with it, doing it about maybe smaller things that are quicker to fix, because that shortening that cycle is going to help things as well. And the underpinning thing of all of this is you have to focus on the relationship. If all you're doing is giving somebody feedback, the relationship will feel underwhelming and it won't feel trusting. So all feedback, good or bad, comes best when it's surrounded with trust and a safe space. So the more you can focus on building that relationship, it could be through one-on-one coaching sessions, through, just sometimes offsite things are nice too, but primarily those one-on-one coaching sessions, they are like that private time that is dedicated to that person. Those are going to help build a relationship. But also like following up, like, hey, how was your weekend? Or how did your kid's thing go that you went to the other day? Oh, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. But just those personal connection things are fantastic for building relationships. And the stronger the relationships we have, the easier it is to give all kinds of feedback and to get all kinds of feedback. So it makes it all better. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it and share it with a friend. And most importantly, with all of what we're doing here, we all need support. Everybody needs support, especially leaders need support. your job as a leader is to support your whole team. And if you're also a leader at home, you're supporting that whole team as well. So leaders need support. So if you would like more support, keep listening to the podcast, share it with friends, or reach out to me directly, because that's what I do with my clients is I give them that support. I am the ear to listen to, that person to bounce ideas off of, that person to maybe bring you down off the ledge a little bit. And as I've been talking about and kind of hinting at, sometimes a community element also helps. So we are working on something that's going to come out in the fall. It's currently the summer if you're listening to this real time, but something coming out in fall of 2025 that is going to be very exciting. That is not only support, but also community. So keep listening. Reach out if you would like support one-on-one in the meantime. And like the podcast, share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a review. And I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.